I want to welcome people back to our program of weekly Zoom interviews. We've been going since the end of May, and we have a guest today who has been in the news, Jay Philbrick. He is one of 538 people who had a very distinct function on Monday. So Jay, why don't you tell our viewers what you were able to do on Monday?
On Monday, I had the honor to be a member of Maine's delegation in the Electoral College, which means I cast one of Maine's 4 votes, or formal votes, I should say, for president and vice president. And I'm 18 years old. I graduated high school back in March. And although there's no really centralized record keeping, I believe I am one of, if not the youngest presidential elector in American history.
Well, as I think about it, probably it's really only since 1970 that you would have, in the early 1970s, that you would have even any contest, because 18-year-olds only got the right to vote at that point. And so that there isn't any master list of who the electors have been.
Unfortunately not, no. It's all, I mean, it might be maintained in each of the 50 state capitals,
Okay.
But I don't know that their age is really recorded there.
Well, it's interesting because it's something that by and large people don't think a lot about, and if they do, it's once every 4 years. But because of what's been going on with the election, I've actually been doing some research into the Electoral College, and there is a formal process to it all. That each delegation meets in its state capital. And so tell people what paperwork that you had to fill out.
To become a presidential elector?
No, that day you were actually there.
Oh, okay. So you essentially, we hold a vote where we all cast our ballots by secret ballot. You circle for president, either Donald Trump or Joe Biden, and for vice president, either Kamala Harris or Mike Pence. Once you circle that and vote, the president of the Electoral College, who was David Bright, who is an elector at large for the state of Maine, he reports the vote, and then we all get basically certified documents, and I think we get 6 copies of them, and they go all over the country, to the Secretary of the Senate, to the district court that covers Maine, I think it's the 1st District Court, to the National Archives and Records Keeping, and to a few other institutions, I'm not sure exactly, but essentially you sign on the dotted line saying, yes, Maine's Electoral College vote was 3 for Donald Trump, or sorry, 3 for Joe Biden, 3 for Kamala Harris, 1 for Donald Trump, 1 for Mike Pence.
Mm-hmm. And so is it a matter of, is your name attached to your vote, or is it just that it was 3-1?
I believe it was just that it was 3-1. I think it's reported that way. Although here in Maine, we have a faithless elector law. Mm-hmm. So when a political party appoints someone to be a presidential elector, you commit to supporting that party's nomination and to voting in line with the people, mm-hmm. Of your congressional district or the statewide vote. And so if I had not voted for Joe Biden, then I would have been replaced with someone who did.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
No, because it has been an issue. I think in the last cycle, there were maybe 6 or 7 faithless electors. And
that's right.
In some places there are penalties, but it's like a misdemeanor and you pay $1,000 fine. And I'm guessing that there might be some people who would make it worth your while sometimes to be a faithless elector. But in Maine, if you were faithless, they would just replace you.
In Maine, yes, they would replace you, and we take an oath of office to support the Constitution, to support the Maine state constitution, and to uphold the laws of the state. And so hypothetically, they could also prosecute you for violation of oath of office.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And that carries a bigger fine than being a faithless elector, which I think is misdemeanor with no fine attached.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, I mean, I don't imagine the Attorney General ever doing that, but yeah, essentially there are deterrents from you doing it here in Maine. They would replace you if it really came down to it, but I can't recall any instance in which a Maine elector actually successfully cast a faithless ballot.
Mm-hmm. What I want to do now is do a share screen so people can see you actually on Monday. Are you seeing the picture?
I'm seeing that, yep.
Okay. And you are in the foreground.
Yep,
And
that's me right there.
yeah, are the three people behind you, are those the other three electors?
No, two of them are.
Yeah.
Yes, one is Peter Laverdier, the Congressional District 2 elector who cast his ballot for Donald Trump. The other is former Senator Shanna Bellows, current Secretary-elect for
Secretary of State, right? Yeah.
And this is the Secretary of the Electoral College. The reason you can't see the fourth elector is because he's the presiding officer. So he's up at the podium up at the front of the room. And that was, as I said, David Bright, who was another at-large elector.
And this is you submitting your paperwork?
Yes. Yep. I've just signed all those copies of the documents to go off to all those different places. And so she's collecting that. And then right after we finish that ceremony, it all gets sent off.
How long did the process take?
It took about an hour. And, you know, it's actually quite an interesting ceremony if you ever tune in. And I think it was recorded this year and put out for the public. So I would encourage people to watch it. But, you know, there were some remarks from the Secretary of State, the outgoing Secretary of State, Matt Dunlap. Governor Mills spoke. Jim Tierney, who's a Harvard Law School professor with strong ties to Maine. He went to University of Maine, UMaine Law School.
He's a former Attorney General of the state of Maine.
Yes, yeah, that as well. He gave a really interesting speech, and I'd really encourage people to go listen to it, about a standoff at the Augusta, at the State House here in Augusta, in the 19th century between a governor who refused to concede the election and you know, conflicting claims about how an election went, and Joshua Chamberlain was actually a central figure in it. So it was a story I hadn't heard before, but to me it's very important and sort of reassuring that, you know, this sort of chaos has happened before, but our country has you know, kept on, and we've survived and moved past.
Well, have you searched around on the internet to see if that video is available?
I believe so. I think the Maine State Legislature website should have it up.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. They recorded the ceremony.
Yes. Yeah, I believe so.
Very good. So what gave you the idea of trying to become an elector?
That's a great question. I mean, part of it was, I think I'm a naturally curious person, and I'm someone who really wants to understand the world around me, and really get a sense of how the process works. So part of it was just sort of, you know, why not get involved at that level? If I'm here at the Maine State Democratic Convention, which happened virtually, why not try to run for something else that gets me, you know, involved in another way? It was part of the learning process for me. But another, probably the bigger reason, was because I think young people need to have a voice in the political process. And although presidential elector is sort of a ceremonial role, of course, they give you time to speak and get a message out that you think is important. And my being there as a young person, getting my message out about trying to come together, heal the political divides, and try to return to fact-based discourse, those were incredibly important to me. And as a young person, saying that to all the adults in the room and getting that to anyone who was watching, I believe is incredibly important to helping young people get involved in politics and improving the world that ultimately us young people are going to have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if my being there would inspire other young people to get involved in the political process, to learn a bit more, to even sit on their school board election or school board meetings and listen and get involved, then that's a win in my books.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about the forum, are you talking about you had a chance to speak on Monday, or are you talking about when you were at the convention, or both?
Monday, I was able to speak. The convention was all online. It was all text-based. So I was able to write and get some of my ideas out there. And when I was campaigning for the position, I also sent, I think 2,000 text messages in total, but to the delegates, telling them about myself and
Mm-hmm.
getting my message out there. But I really had a chance to speak with, to the general public on Monday.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I didn't realize that there was that element as well. So it makes me all the more want to find this video.
Exactly, yeah.
And so the process is, this is at the state party conventions. They decide who the electors will be for that party. And were there other people running for the position?
Yes, yeah, it was actually, there were a surprising amount. I would say there were at least 10 or 15 candidates running for the election.
And there's 4 slots?
That's correct. There's 4 total slots, and I think each person, if you were a delegate to the Maine State Democratic Convention, in my instance, from Congressional District 1, then you'd vote on your 2 electors. Congressional District 2, you'd vote on your 2 electors. And from there, I'm not sure exactly how it was decided, but one would be designated as the at-large delegate. So someone voting with the overall total of Maine's vote, and then one would be tied to that congressional district's vote.
And so just to give a little explanation, in most states, I believe in 48 states, it's winner take all. So whoever wins the popular vote in that state gets all the electoral votes. Maine and Nebraska do it differently. So in Maine, 2 of the votes are winner take all, and then the other ones are done by congressional district.
Exactly. Yep.
So there were 4 Democratic electors. Someone doesn't get to vote because the 2nd district went for Trump, so the Republican elector. So out of the 4 Democratic electors, how is it decided who didn't get to vote?
I'm not entirely certain. Of course, I was running from Congressional District 1. Senator Bellows was also running for Congressional District 1.
Okay.
And then David Bright and another Democrat, I'm not sure exactly who it was, ran from the 2nd congressional district.
And that was the one that was in play. That's the one.
Correct.
You were safe because you were in the 1st district.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it was the 2nd place vote getter in the Congressional District 2 elector race was assigned to the congressional district.
So at the convention, with what you said, something between like 10 and 15 candidates running, did they do it by ranked choice voting to get it down to 4?
Every person got 2 votes that they were able to cast.
Okay.
It wasn't ranked choice voting.
Okay. And so they just went with the top 4 vote getters?
Yep, I think top 2 in each congressional district.
Okay. Very good. And so overall, what was the experience like for you?
It was, in a word, it was kind of solemn and somber. This is a really important symbol for, the transition of power, and sort of it's the finishing step, hopefully, of our democratic process. And so I think in such a chaotic and relentless election season, honestly, seeing that come to an official close was powerful. was important. But it also saddened me, of course, there are those who claim the election isn't over, and that, I don't think the president of the United States has accepted the results yet. And so there's almost a tinge of sadness there. I just hope that our system remains strong and that we're able to, keep the democratic processes that have kept our country great for so long.
I've just been trying to do the math in my head, and I think, I mean, it is a solemn, it's a rare occasion. I think this would have been I think this is our 59th presidential election. So that ceremony that took place on Monday is something that's only happened 59 times before. And
Yeah.
even less in Maine, because Maine has only been a state since 1820.
Exactly. Yeah. Massachusetts may have had a few more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was an honor to be there, really. I mean, it was quite, not sure the word for it, but it was just an incredible experience, like fundamentally. And, listening to all the speakers and talking with the other electors was, I think, deeply moving. And I'm sort of glad that Maine splits our congressional or our elector votes by congressional district, because I had a chance to talk to Peter Laverdiere, who is the elector for Congressional District 2, and he was voting for President Trump. I think being able to come together across those party lines is really important. And I appreciated being there, speaking with him, and having an opportunity to really come together to close out this election season together on what I hope is a unified front.
Well, another part of the process for you is because of the uniqueness of your situation, perhaps being the youngest elector in the history of the United States, it garnered a lot of press attention. I saw you the other day being interviewed by the BBC. So
that's correct.
Can you tell us what that part of the experience was like for you?
Well, I've never done anything like that before. It was, at first, I mean, it was local news. Channel 8, I think, was one of the first ones.
I saw Channel 13 did something on you, I saw.
Yeah, at this point, they've run several pieces each over the past few months. At first it was, this is cool. This is something that'll happen once. I'm glad I can talk about it, hopefully shed some light on the system for people who don't understand it, or maybe it's an interesting story. And so people will read up more about the Electoral College in their free time. That's always something I hope for. But as it kind of got closer and closer, I'll tell you, we almost never answer our phone because it's mostly spam calls and telemarketers. For the past week, it's been all journalists, and which has been.
How far afield in the United States? Is it beyond Maine?
Yeah. Oh, beyond Maine. I think I talked to a reporter from the Boston Globe at one point. I've had a piece in Canada for the Globe and Mail. I obviously had a interview from the BBC, and that was nationwide, broadcast nationwide. And a lot of Maine press here.
Well, you came off very well. You're very articulate and very composed.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I was doing all of it for essentially the first time, but it was great to meet. Lots of these reporters have been covering politics for so long, and they all had really unique perspectives and takes on the situation. So it was honestly, aside from the coverage and all of that, it was honestly a great experience talking to and learning from all of those people around the country and even around the world, it seems. who had all these different perspectives and questions.
I want to get back to process because there technically is still one more step to the Electoral College. You voted in the 50 state capitals. These votes took place on December 14th.
Yes.
You had your paperwork. It was sent off to many places. It was sent off to Washington. And Congress will assemble on January 6th to record the votes, to formally accept the votes.
Yes.
And there is a process there where they can be contested. So we are not completely through the process yet. That will not happen until January 6th.
That's correct.
Do you have a sense of what you think is going to happen on January 6th?
I think, as always, there's going to be some noise. There's probably going to be some, impassioned speeches on the floor of the House and Senate. But ultimately, I think the Electoral College results will be accepted without too much fanfare, without too much debate or chaos. We've already seen some of the Republican leadership in the Senate urge its members not to support those claims of contested elections. I think, honestly, Monday's vote was the last point at which there could have been any flip in the results. I don't think Congress counting them will result in any changes.
So it can be contested, but it has to be contested by at least one representative and one senator. I think people expect that there'll be perhaps more than one representative who will contest results, but that's not sufficient. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. There still needs to be at least one senator who would go along with that. And then it would go back to each individual body, and there can be up to 2 hours of debate. And then at the end, each body would vote. And the feeling is, well, even if it went along party lines, that both houses have to agree. Both chambers have to agree, and that because the chambers currently are split. Even if it was a split decision, it would still go to the president-elect, who is currently Joe Biden. So there is still this one more hurdle to go, and hopefully we will get through it smoothly. And but it remains to be seen. So my final question is, what do you think of the Electoral College? Should we have this institution as part of our constitutional system?
I mean, I don't think in the ideal world we'd have an Electoral College, but I think obviously we do have one, and we have to work within its limitations. And I don't think, I think there would have to be a lot of thought put into reforming it in some way. I was talking with David Bright yesterday, actually, about, should we move to a national popular vote? And yeah, he brought up a point which I thought was very interesting. He said, if we move to a national popular vote, voting standards, so who's able to vote, when they can register, all of those would have to be equal in all the 50 states, or else it would probably run afoul of the Equal Protection Clause. Mm-hmm. If we move to a national popular vote system, there's a good chance that it could be contested under those grounds, and Congress and the Constitution specifically grant states power over their own election systems. So I don't know, given our constitutional system, that we can have that we can abolish the Electoral College. I think there are some promising workarounds, like the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which is an agreement among states that they will send their electoral votes towards the winner of the popular vote, but only once that compact represents a majority of the Electoral College. So in the meantime, it doesn't have any effect on the presidential election. But I think once they gain about only 70 more votes in the entire Electoral College, we might have a system where from then on we have a national popular vote where states can still choose their electors. I think that's a good system that we should move towards, but we also need to ensure that our elections are free of gerrymandering, free of voter suppression, and free of these other obstacles that might interfere with a national popular vote. I'm also a big fan of the congressional district method that Maine and Nebraska have. It makes no sense for, in a place like California, so many Republicans to be cut out of the political process, or in a state like Texas, so many Democrats to be cut out of the political process. I think if we move towards a congressional district system in the meantime, which states already have the power to do, it will help alleviate partisanship and also be a better representation of our democracy. I think in the long term, we should move towards a national popular vote through the Interstate Compact. But it's definitely going to take some time and real commitment towards including everyone in the political process on both sides of the aisle.
I raised the question because Margaret Chase Smith was very adamantly opposed to the Electoral College all the way back to the mid-1960s. She was calling for its abolition. And so that we have, because the Electoral College has so much been in the news, one of the things we do every year is an essay contest for high school students. So we've decided this year to make the topic what students think about the Electoral College, whether we should keep it, whether we should abolish it, or whether we should reform it along the lines you've suggested or some other way. We just started publicizing that on Monday, because it was not only the day that the Electoral College met, it also happened to be Margaret Chase Smith's birthday as well. So
oh, nice.
That will be the essay contest topic for high school seniors for this 2020-2021 school year. But there is a lot more that makes you an interesting person besides just having been an elector. I'm going to do share screen again so that people can see where we first came to know you at the Margaret Chase Smith Library. And this is back in 2018, and there's a program called the United States Senate Youth Program. And each state selects high school students to go down to Washington, D.C., and it's done on a competitive basis. So these are the students who are trying for that honor back in 2018. And see Jay there in the front, some of the other contestants, and you are giving your speech. So what do you remember about that day being here?
I remember being, it was overwhelming almost. The history, I personally had never been to the Margaret Chase Smith Library. And the structure of that day was first a tour of the library, learning some more about Margaret Chase Smith's history, and then an interview and a speech about a policy topic. And I remember, walking through the halls of the Margaret Chase Smith Library, learning more about her life, learning about her presidential campaign, a campaign without cash, where she refused all donor contributions, regardless of where they came from, and still finished second place for president at the Republican National Convention. I remember being floored by her courage and her forward thinking at the time. Maine always is a politically interesting state, and I'm really proud of some of the leaders the state has produced. But I think Margaret Chase Smith is an incredibly inspiring figure who I think speaks frankly to the attitudes of Mainers, the values we have, and also sort of a consensus, among conservatives, among liberals, about what we need in government. I think she was an incredible figure who really prioritized her values over, any political considerations of the day. And for that, I really admired her. And so learning about her at the same time as trying to think of topics for this essay contest or for this speech.
I have your research form here, and it said that you were interested in campaign finance.
That's exactly true.
Yeah.
I have always been interested in campaign finance reform, and when I heard that Margaret Chase Smith ran this campaign without cash, I talked about that in my speech and how much I admired it, and how I think it's a great model and speaks to something we need more of, honestly, in our modern election systems. So it was a little overwhelming trying to do all of those things at once, trying to think of the speech and learn the history. But at the end of it, I really was able to find that intersection of history and our current political moment, which I think was uniquely powerful. And I don't know that I've felt anything quite like it, where such a connection to the past and to the history of our state, and a clear connection to our modern issues that I care a lot about. I don't know that I've felt anything so powerful since in politics. So it was honestly an incredibly powerful experience, and I remember it, of course, positively from my experience. But I'd love to come up to Skowhegan again sometime and take some more time there.
Well, when people are able to move about more freely again, and we hope you will come back. It's always
Absolutely.
a very thrilling day for us from the standpoint is to see how many bright, talented young people there are out there, and that we will eventually be turning over the reins to people who care very much about the future of this country. So you were, we select, I think technically we recommend 2 candidates and then 2 alternates, and the senators have some sign off on that, ultimately in conjunction with the State Department of Education. And you were one of the 2 delegates who got to go down to Washington, D.C. And I have a share screen of small part of what that was. There's a lot more that goes on. Here you are with Senator Angus King and the other delegate. So tell people what goes on as part of the Senate Youth Program, besides having a picture taken with a senator.
Right. I mean, that's a great part of it. It's really nonstop, sort of mind-blowing experiences. I mean, over the course of...
Is it March, or is
it happens in March?
It's essentially 1 week?
1 week, yep. And so it's one cold week in March. Compared to Maine, it's not bad, but the weather's not great. Don't go for the weather. But the incredible thing about it is, the level of access you have to everyone in the federal government. We met the president, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, more senators than you can count, leaders of cabinet members, foreign ambassadors, everyone taking questions from high schoolers, talking frankly and openly about the political process and their attitudes, because they make sure that there's no media coverage there, and so you get straight, honest answers from so many of our nation's leaders. It's incredibly inspiring, and it's part of why I care so much about politics. That experience really changed my life, and not only got me connected with 103 other incredibly motivated and passionate students, many of whom I still talk to today and go to school with in college. But it gave me a huge appreciation for the importance of leadership, and what really the stakes are for our country, and the importance of maintaining our system. There were days where we'd talk with a senator at lunch, and then go to talk to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court a couple hours later. It's like nothing
Mm-hmm.
I'd ever experienced. And I recommend it as probably the single most influential experience or program in my life.
Mm-hmm.
It truly was an honor. And for all those who are juniors or seniors in high school, you can't go wrong applying for it,
Mm-hmm.
because it will change your life.
Mm-hmm. So to step back a little bit, it is a program that was started by the William Randolph Hearst Foundations in 1962. And essentially the idea was that each senator would be able to invite a high school student from their state. So the number was around 100. You said 103. I think there's something like, do they have people come from the Department of Defense education system?
Yep. They have 2 from DC, well, 2 from each of the 50 states, 2 from DC, and 2 from Department of Defense educational activity, which is international schools.
Okay, so that would be 104, but someone was missing, so that's why you were 103.
103 other.
Oh, other. Okay,
Yes.
you're the 104th.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, all right. And so who of all these people that you met, well, did you get to ask any questions? You personally, did you get to ask?
Yep. I asked a question of Chief Justice Roberts.
Which was?
In particular, I asked, in light of some of the Supreme Court's controversial decisions, especially in Citizens United versus FEC.
Which is a campaign finance.
A campaign finance case, exactly. I asked whether he'd ever regretted one of his decisions or thought maybe later on that he should have voted another way.
What was his response?
What
was his lawyerly response?
his lawyerly response, he frankly said he was focused on doing the best he could with what was in front of them and in front of the court. And, he said he could stay up all night worrying about, what a case's impacts are, but he said there's no procedure for really the Supreme Court to easily reverse its decision. Another promising case has to come up. 4 of the 9 justices have to vote to take it up. So it's not his decision alone by any means. And so he said he was focused on doing, the best job he could at the time, and making that decision ultimately was the last time he really thought about it. And, it struck me as, of course, it makes sense as an answer. But I feel like, as an attitude towards government, if there's no system to really easily reverse these things, then, focusing on what you can do right now with what you have where you are, I think that's a Teddy Roosevelt quote, is the most important thing we can do. And wherever we are, doing what we can is critical. And I don't think fear of failure or fear of unreasonable repercussions should hold any of us back. If I ran for presidential elector because I thought, why not? Might as well do it while I'm here. And so, although, I couldn't have imagined another response from him, I think it really speaks to sort of my attitude towards getting involved in politics, which is I'm here right now, and if I can make a difference, a positive difference in the world, then I will.
Mm-hmm. So of all the people you met during that week, who made the greatest impression upon you?
That's a good question.
And it could be a student. It doesn't necessarily have to be one of the political figures.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Because you said you've stayed in contact with some people.
Oh yeah. We still have a group chat that's pretty active to this day. So we're all connected now. I would say, Senator Richard Blumenthal, who's a senator from Connecticut, he really articulated his speech was about our democratic process, and in part he talked about campaign finance reform and other issues like that. But he also talked pretty frankly about, what's not working in our
Mm-hmm.
country.
Mm-hmm.
And I admired him for, his honesty, because I think it takes a lot of courage for a political figure to say something like that,
Mm-hmm.
something that could risk alienating people to the political process, but ultimately, needs to be said and needs to be articulated so that someone can come along and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So I really admired him. I'd say him and the Chief Justice, of course, made the biggest impact on me that weekend.
I should add, before we move on from the United States Senate Youth Program, that it's something very near and dear to the heart of our other United States Senator from Maine, Susan Collins, because she is an alumna of the program. She was selected in 1971 to come down to Washington, D.C. and learn about the government. One of the things she most remembers about that visit is how much time she got to spend with Margaret Chase Smith. And we found several years ago an entry in Margaret Chase Smith's date book, and she had like an hour-and-a-half meeting with Susan Collins to encourage her to pursue her goals and dreams, which she has obviously gone on to do. And we're very pleased as the library to be the host of the competition every year. And because of the pandemic, we can't have it in person this year. We were able last year, but unfortunately, that group didn't have the opportunity to go down to Washington, D.C.
My high school roommate at the Maine School of Science and Math, the public boarding school up in Limestone, was one of the delegates in
Michael
selected in 2020. Michael DeLorge, yep.
Okay. Yes.
So he's a good friend of mine, and I wish.
It's really a shame, because I mean,
feel incredibly sorry for him.
Yeah. I mean, you've talked about what an impression it made upon you, and not to have that ability, it's a shame. I think they're going to try to do things for them, but it's just one of those things.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Yeah. So the modification this year is that we're going to do a virtual competition. So we'll see how that goes. Normally we would do it in late October, early November, but we've shifted it to January. And it remains to be seen whether this group will be able to go down to Washington, D.C. in March.
Exactly.
I wouldn't have high hopes of that, but again, one of the prices that we pay for getting through a pandemic. I mean, I think Margaret's high school generation, and a lot of her male classmates wound up over in Europe, which is what wasn't what they were planning to do when they graduated from high school. So there are these times in history where our lives all change because of larger forces. So I want to pick up on another thing. You're someone who keeps challenging yourself. So after you did the Senate Youth Program, you were so enamored of being in Washington that you became a Senate page.
I did.
How long were you a page?
It was about the summer session for the Senate Page program is divided into two. So I think I was there for 3 weeks or a month.
Okay.
And that was, working directly on the floor of the U.S. Senate, doing things like carrying documents and carrying messages, but also meeting with senators, attending policy lunches. I had the honor of having breakfast with Senator Collins, with some of her congressional interns as well. And so that was also, an unparalleled level of access that I'd had. And I was a bit spoiled to it because of the Senate Youth Program, of course, but it still was an incredibly meaningful experience.
So Congress is not held in very high regard right now, and there's great laments about how much more contentious and polarized Congress is, and in particular the Senate, which always had a reputation of more decorum. Did you get a sense of the contentiousness in the Senate?
No. I mean, frankly, like everyone in the Senate acted, there is a level of collegiality and respect of, regardless of political ideology, that I think, all everyone should be able to learn from and emulate, because I think that would go a long way in healing our political divide. It's interesting because one of the things that impressed me most about the Senate was the range of issues they talked about every single day.
Yeah.
On one particular day, there was a vote about using the War Powers Act to limit the president's ability to conduct the war in Yemen and support the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen. And on that same day, there was a major veterans bill passed, or a major veterans bill discussed and debated and later passed. There was discussion about Medicare and letting it negotiate drug prices. I think part of what fuels the political divide is the simple fact that, Americans only have so many minutes in a day to look at news. All that is really covered are those contentious issues because, it makes sense to prioritize those. But we get an idea that it's all conflict all the time. Yeah. And frankly, there's so much going on that is positive and is working towards making a bigger difference, that I think, people who haven't been there in person and haven't, worked there don't really see. That being said, there is, an unprecedented level of dysfunction and polarization. And I think part of that is, lobbied at congressional leadership. Part of it is because of the influence of money in politics. And a lot of it is how, some political figures have worked to divide the country. And I think, frankly, none of those are easy issues to confront. But I think there's a growing consensus from, political donors, from figures in government, from, everyday Americans that, dysfunction and polarization aren't just side effects. They're not just, things that can be tolerated. They have a real detrimental impact on all of our lives. People cut off loved ones. People don't speak to their friends because of politics. And I think there's a growing consensus that we as a country need to move back to where we can talk with each other once again, and we can make real political progress on issues that are incredibly important, because frankly, there are so many issues that deserve our attention, but while we're attacking each other, we can't make progress on any of them.
Who amongst the senators impressed you on sort of thinking when the cameras get turned off? Who stands out to you? Did anyone?
That's a good question. I am always impressed by, of course, being a Mainer, seeing Senator Collins and Senator King actually, doing their jobs in Washington. They have a level of willingness to work together, despite being ideologically very different, frankly. But they really stand up for Maine as a state, and I know they both care about it and care about everyone here having an opportunity to succeed. And so seeing them in action, I was able to speak to both of them over that weekend. I ran into Senator King in an elevator once, and that was a really funny experience once he realized I was from Maine, and instantly the connection was there. And as I said, I was able to have breakfast and a conversation with Senator Collins. But seeing them work together about, talking about issues that really meant a lot to me as a Mainer, I think was really inspiring. And so the cameras are always on in the Senate. On the Senate floor. Yeah. And I think that's a great thing. And it provides a great level of access. But, you know, off the floor. I think I'm proud of our congressional delegation. I think they do a fantastic job standing up for Maine.
So unfortunately, we need to get this wrapped up. You're a very fascinating person. And I always say I could, many of these people I interview, I could go on for hours and hours, but there's a limit to how much people want to watch.
Exactly. No.
But let people know, where are you now in your life?
So right now I'm a college freshman. I'm actually at home in Maine because of Brown's reopening plan. But in January I'll be going to Brown University and starting my first semester there. I completed an internship this past fall, and we'll be doing spring and summer on campus. I'm also working with a state senator named Justin Chenette on something called the Maine Democracy Project, which is a nonprofit that is trying to connect young people with civic engagement opportunities and getting people more involved in politics. So that's what I'm focused on right now, because getting involved in politics has made a huge impact on my life, and I want to be able to get other people aware of the opportunities that are around them every day to make a difference. So that's where I am right now, and I'm doing some work to promote telehealth for seniors and veterans in the state of Maine.
What was your internship this fall?
It was with the Maine Governor's Economic Recovery Committee. So looking at economic policy that can help Mainers once this pandemic is over.
Very good.
Yeah.
And what do you see as your future? What would you like to do when you're done with school?
That's a good question. I think when a lot of people talk to me, they have an idea of that I know exactly what I'm going to do.
See, I don't, because I know there's a couple of tracks in your life. There's this political track, but you also went to this Maine School of Science and Math. And one of my recollections of when we were talking to you, when we were interviewing you, you have a very strong science and math background. You've done some like inventions or something like that, or
it's true. Yeah, I'm actually, I think my most visible role is in politics, and that's why people think, oh, he's a politician. There we go. That's where he's going to be. I frankly don't know. I'm interested in biology. I'm interested in mathematics. Economics has really been interesting to me as sort of the intersection of math and public policy and trying to help people through economic opportunity. So I think my future might lie somewhere trying to promote economic policy that, helps, ordinary and working Americans. That's kind of my dream. But frankly, I don't know if I'll end up in public health or public policy or economics or what field, but I know I want to be somewhere where I can use math and science and use my knowledge of public policy to help people.
Well, it's interesting because Michael DeLorge has been drifting towards public health.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. No, we talk about this a lot. We're very similar, us two. And he's a really good friend of mine. And
we've seen with the pandemic how vitally important public health can be.
Exactly. And I think, frankly, that it's sometimes a thankless job. And
that's one of the criticisms, that we hadn't built our public health infrastructure sufficiently to get our hands on this as soon as we should have.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely a complicated field. And I mean, we've already seen like medical school applications surge in numbers. So I think I'm not alone. Michael and I aren't alone, I should say, in looking at public health as a really big part of the future. But I know I want to be somewhere where I'm helping people make the best of their lives, and whether that's in math, science, public policy, I want to do something there.
Do you know yet what your major at Brown will be?
Good question. Definitely.
Or your double or your triple major?
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning right now. Definitely economics, and we have an applied math track, but I don't know whether a second major or a minor would be in public health or biology or applied mathematics or public policy. I've got plenty of time to figure it out, and I'm gonna make the best of that. That's my
Yeah, you're only a freshman. You get plenty of time.
yeah.
Let me ask you this as a final question. Do you ever foresee yourself running for elective office?
I think it's not. Um, I wouldn't dismiss it. I can see myself doing it at some point, um, but it's only because I believe that elected office is somewhere where we can make a difference and help people out. If all this polarization continues and the government and its business is held up for another 40 years, then I can't see myself being close to public office. Maybe I'll serve on my school board or something, or my town council. But frankly, if all this polarization and animosity is what's going to be our political system from now on, then I don't think so. But if people realize that our political system really can make a difference in so many people's lives, and we can use it as a positive tool, then I would say it could happen.
Well, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to share with us what you've been doing with your life, and compliment you for all the challenges that you've presented yourself with. And hopefully you'll keep on finding these ways to both challenge yourself and to help out society.
Thanks so much, David. And it sort of my involvement in politics really started with the Senate Youth Program. So I can't express enough how much that program has made a difference in my life. And thank you and the staff at the Margaret Chase Smith Library for sort of setting me on this journey. I credit it all to your folks. So thank you so much for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, and good luck to you as you move forward, and enjoy the holiday season.
You too. Stay safe.
You too.